In 1980, the Cold War wasn't just politics, it was personal. It ran in the background of every TV broadcast, every school drill, and every Olympic ceremony. The world was locked in a standoff between two nuclear giants, the capitalist United States and the communist Soviet Union. And in February of that year, inside a modest hockey rink in Lake Placid, New York, something happened that no one could have predicted. Something no one would forget. This is the story of how a bunch of American college kids took on the greatest hockey team the world had ever seen, and won. This is the miracle on ice. To understand the magnitude of what happened, you have to understand the odds. The Soviet hockey team was a machine. These weren't amateurs. They were full-time state-sponsored athletes who trained and traveled like professionals. Even though Olympic rules forbade professionals from competing, they'd won gold in 5 of the previous 6 Winter Olympics. Just weeks before the 1980 Games, they had embarrassed the NHL's best players and demolished Team USA 10-3 in an exhibition match. The United States, on the other hand, their roster was composed of 20 guys with an average age of 21. Most were still in college. None had played in the NHL. Most hadn't even played together. Their coach, Herb Brooks, was the mad scientist behind this experiment. Driven, intense, and often cold, Brooks was obsessed with building not just a team, but the right team. He held grueling tryouts, rejected more talented players in favor of gritty ones, and pushed his athletes harder than they had ever experienced. Many of them hated him for it. At first, the rest of the world wasn't buying it. Analysts, fans, even the players themselves questioned whether they had any business being on the Olympic stage. After all, this was a country still reeling from the Iranian hostage crisis, economic stagnation, and a general sense that America's best days were behind it. The last time the U.S. had won Olympic hockey gold was 1960, 20 years prior, and the Soviets had only gotten better. When they opened the tournament with a 2-2 tie against Sweden, few took notice, but inside the locker room, something was clicking. Herb Brooks was more than a coach. He was a psychological tactician. He didn't just teach drills, he created adversity, manufactured tension. He broke them down individually so they could build up together. After one lackluster performance early on, Brooks famously forced the team to skate Herbies, back-and-forth sprints, for over an hour after the game ended, long after the fans had left the arena. His mantra? The name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. By the time they faced powerhouse Czechoslovakia in their second game, the Americans were a different team, faster, meaner, more connected. They won that game 7-3. And then came wins over Norway, Romania, and West Germany. Suddenly, this group of nobodies was heading into the medal round, and their next opponent? The Juggernaut. February 22, 1980. The stage was set. The Soviet team entered the Lake Placid rink confident, even bored. To them, this was a formality. They'd beaten this exact U.S. team 10-3 just a few weeks prior. No one beats the Soviets in Olympic hockey. No one. But from the opening face-off, it was clear. This was not the same team they played in Madison Square Garden. These kids were faster, hungrier, and they weren't playing scared. Vladislav Tretiak, the Soviet goaltender often called the best in the world, was stunned when the first period ended in a 2-2 tie. And then, in a shocking move, Soviet coach Viktor Tikhonov pulled Tretiak from the game. He would later call it the biggest mistake of his career. The Soviets came out swinging. In the second period, they regained the lead 3-2, controlling possession and unleashing relentless attacks. But U.S. goalie Jim Craig, wearing his late father's plaid scarf inside his jersey, refused to crack. He made save after save, keeping the Americans within reach. The clock ticked. The tension rose. And in that locker room before the third period, Herb Brooks didn't give a long speech. He just looked around and said, "You were born to be a player. You were meant to be here. This moment is yours." The third period was when legends were born. Mark Johnson tied the game at 3-3, but it wasn't over. People forget this part. To win gold, the Americans still had to this game. You'll take it to your graves. They responded. The U.S. came back to win 4-2 and took gold. Euphoria, flags, tears, thunderous chants of USA. A nation weary from economic crisis, hostages in Iran, and Cold War fatigue suddenly stood taller. For a brief shining moment, hope beat cynicism. Back home, the team was immortalized. Jim Craig draped in an American flag. Mike Eruzione never needed to play another professional game. His moment had already become legend. Herb Brooks went on to coach in the NHL. He passed away in 2003 before he could see himself portrayed in the film Miracle. But his spirit, his belief in pushing ordinary people to achieve the extraordinary lives on. This wasn't just a game. It was a reminder that when the odds are long and the stakes are high, belief, preparation, and grit can make a miracle. They were just college kids, but in 10 days, they changed the narrative of a nation and proved that sometimes the impossible just takes a little longer.